WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station.
Right out of the gate, Temple gonna pick it up. 10-5, touchdown Temple. Gonna be play action. There's gonna be a flag on the play. Rivera gonna throw deep downfield, and that ball is gonna be intercepted. And how about that? Nate D. Smith, who's battling a hamstring injury, makes the interception. Walker gonna be in shotgun with Jamie Gilmore to his left, Christopher spread out wide to the right. They're going to hand it off to Gilmore, who's going to cut off the right side, and he's in for a Temple touchdown. Jamie Gilmore increases the Temple lead, and the Owls are off to a perfect start, 27-0, with 2:57 remaining in this first quarter. It's going to be 2nd and 6, ball on the 31. PJ going to fake the end around, going to look left. PJ has a wide open Jalen Fitzpatrick, who's going to tiptoe his way in for a Temple touchdown, and the lead will increase. Temple up 34-0. Here it is, 2nd and 12. Rivera going to work out of the gun, 5 wide, 3 to the right, 2 to the left on the far side. Going to be a little bit of a high snap. Rivera going to put it right over the middle, and that ball's going to be intercepted. It's Sharif Finch. He has all the way to go to the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5. Touchdown, Temple. Sharif Finch takes it to the house and makes it 41-0. Rivera under center with Williams 5 yards behind him. Rivera looks left, looks right. Play action, rolls out to the right. Pressure coming. Ball over the middle, and it's going to be intercepted by Temple. And it was Kyrie Lucas on the interception, and Temple will take back over in favorable field possession. Temple trying to punch this one in. Riley going to hand it up the middle to Hassan Reddick, and that will be a Temple touchdown. Temple increases their lead, and it is now 58-0. They're all over Delaware State. The Owls are stinging the Hornets. Yes, big win for the Temple Owls up against Delaware State, putting up 59 points up against the FCS school. Temple now goes to 15-11 all-time up against FCS schools after coming off the loss last year up against Fordham. That was our play-by-play calls of the Temple victory, where you could hear the game listening to us on iHeartRadio at WHIP. The man that was on the TV call was Dave Leno from ESPN3, and Dave now joins us to talk about Temple's big victory over Delaware State. Dave, it's Zach and Chase here in Philly. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks so much. And some thrilling calls over there. You guys sound great.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And we were actually, as we were looking back at things on ESPN3, you guys did a great job as well. Let's get to it, though. The big concern for me coming out of this game, yes, Temple won the game 59-0. This was an inferior football team in Delaware State. They should go out there and blow them out. But the quarterback play was a bit concerning to me. P.J. Walker had 2 interceptions. I know he did have that touchdown pass late in the first half to Kenny Harper. But what did you notice go wrong for the quarterback in P.J. Walker?
Well, I did know coming into the broadcast that PJ got hurt a couple weeks ago in that Navy game on a quarterback sneak. That's what Matt Rule told us on our conference call. And he didn't take any reps during the bye week, then took some, obviously, in the week leading up into Saturday's contest against Delaware State. I think one of the main themes coming into the year for P.J. Walker has been to limit the damaging plays. But personally, guys, I like when a sophomore quarterback takes some shots. Last year, as you guys well know more than anybody, it was a disastrous start for Temple. Started off 0-6 before defeating Army in P.J.'s first win and also Matt Rule's first win. So I'm not as concerned with the quarterback position with what P.J. did in those 2 interceptions that you alluded to. I think the plan was going in that Connor Riley was going to take a couple snaps anyway, and there's really not a quarterback controversy there. But I look for PJ to bounce back after those 2 interceptions. As he gets more healthy, guys, I think going into conference play, you'll see him flourish a little bit better.
Yeah, there's no QB controversy here. They did tell us before the game that, like you just said, the game plan was to get Connor Riley in there a little bit towards the halftime of the game, and they eventually did to start off the third quarter just to reward him for his hard work in practice, since he is a redshirt senior, and he was the starter a year ago before PJ took over. And going into the year, you saw PJ Walker. A concern for me was he loses his safety blanket in Robbie Anderson as he was thrown off the football team. Early on, he's really connect well with John Christopher and Jalen Fitzpatrick, but when you go up against a team like Delaware State, you get a lot of new bodies into the game, and Temple was able to put almost every player into the game. Was there a wide receiver that stood out to you besides Fitzpatrick or Christopher on Saturday?
I definitely like Nate Hairston, even though that when Walker, I believe, tried to go to him, it was intercepted by Bolden. I know Hairston didn't have a monstrous game, but I expect him, just doing the research that I have been doing the two games, called the Navy game and the Delaware State, I expect big things from him moving forward. They didn't really use the tight ends too much. I noticed the watch didn't have a catch on Saturday, but mainly sticking out was Fitzpatrick, obviously, like you mentioned. Besides him, I would love to see a little bit more of a Khalif Urban. I think he's a guy that possesses that Darren Sproles-like mentality. That's someone that Matt Rules kind of compared him to with the physicality and how he just goes for yards. Doesn't matter about the coverage that's on, and he's going to definitely take a couple of licks. I also think that Shippen is another guy that didn't have a big game. The wide receivers didn't have a big game at all. I mean, that's what it is. But let me transition to the running backs here, and obviously Kenneth Harper, a guy that we knew going in was kind of going to be a situational guy, even though he did have did have a touchdown in that contest, obviously, on that rushing touchdown. I think he caught one as well coming out of the backfield. But I thought Jahad Thomas had a great game. He was a guy that, I guess number 2 and number 3 on this depth chart with Zaire out. And Jamie Gilmore, bouncing back and forth as well for the special teams in the offensive unit. I thought Jahad really stepped up in that number 1 running back spot this weekend, and I think that attests to the depth that Temple has moving forward.
Dave Leno, who had the call on ESPN3 on Saturday, joins the show right now. Dave, it's Chase. Thanks for hopping on with us. As an aspiring broadcaster, Temple puts up 59 points. That's great for you because you have a lot of plays to put on your reel.
It is and it isn't, Chase. The thing going into it that's so tough from people don't understand from a behind-the-scenes broadcast method, different from like the NFL where teams will go, they'll go too deep and maybe too deep. That's sometimes the stretch. Obviously, the NFL, you don't see the reserves come in.
Right.
In college football, when you put 85 guys that are getting a scholarship here, it's very difficult to center in on those third and fourth string guys coming in. So as a broadcaster, especially when it got to that maybe the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, yeah, sure, there's a lot of plays to get on the reel because they scored 59 points, which is great. But it's always a little bit cumbersome for me, the analyst, because we're seeing guys that maybe we didn't concentrate our prep on. So we do the best we can. We ID them. That's the most important thing. And then I can dig up some things on the fly, which I think we did okay at. But that's something that, if anybody's out there that's an aspiring broadcaster, the biggest thing you can do is you got to call a 59-0 game the same way you call a game that comes down to the wire in the last play. If people can't distinguish the two calls, then you're doing your job. If you kind of lose your energy a little bit, which is something that producers always hit us up on the talk back button in our headsets that people don't hear at home. Hey, keep it up, keep up the energy, even though the game's getting a little ahead and it's lopsided. Go into some storylines, kind of still make it interesting despite the score. Those are the type of things that you constantly got to keep in mind when calling a game like we saw on Saturday.
Yeah, great advice. We appreciate that. Just curious, I know you went to Indiana, right? Are you a local guy, though?
I am, yep. I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, live in the suburbs of Philly now. I went to IU as an undergrad, and kind of my end really was I was at Indiana when the Big Ten Network started.
Wow.
So at 21 years old, I did my first ever live TV game, which was an Indiana-Ohio State field hockey game. Right place, right time. The game was at Indiana. They needed somebody. I was still a student at the time. And I'll never forget, it rained that whole day. I went to the coach at Indiana, Amy Robertson, for field hockey, and I said, listen, I don't know so much. I don't know a lot about field hockey, but, help me out to which was like 4 weeks out. He gave me a bunch of Olympic DVD broadcasts of the calls that he liked, and I studied very hard. I'm really big on my preparation. And ever since then, one TV game turned into two turned into four. And now I'm working with ESPN. This is my third year with them, primarily calling games on ESPN3, college basketball and football. And then I work with the Big Ten Network as well. Yesterday, I just called a women's soccer game. First one, actually, at USAC Field at Rutgers. Rutgers beat Michigan. So I do that and also freelance with a couple other TV and radio spots. I was just working the U.S. Open for 3 weeks. I'm a big tennis guy. I play tennis a lot. And so I try to use the competitive balance, not just in the broadcast work, but also athletically, too.
Great stuff, Dave. I mean, we do really like your work. Going back to the game, Temple's defense was really bad last year. Their secondary was one of the worst units in football. They gave up a bunch of big plays. They struggled to force turnovers. This year, that's a totally different story, as they've now forced 13 turnovers so far this year. They forced just 15 all of last year. What'd you see from that unit? Because I know you're going up against a Division I AA opponent and an inept team at that, but they were flying around, making big hits, and they look really good.
I think Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, loves his defense right now. And as you mentioned, they played an FCS opponent. But I'll tell you guys, to kind of back up my research and the prep that goes into it, I took the hour and a half drive the week before during Temple's bye week to watch Delaware State play Towson. And Towson last year went to the FCS championship game and lost to North Dakota State, who's won, I believe, 3 consecutive FCS titles there. So I really believe that Temple is flourishing on the defensive tackle because guys are stepping up, like a Sharif Finch, those, I believe, 2 fumble recoveries this year, 2 consecutive touchdowns coming from the Navy game and also on Saturday. I think he's done great. I think Nate D. Smith, as I heard in one of your calls, battling that hamstring injury, didn't start, and Allen started for him. He's really stepped up. Medikevich, obviously, had a topsy-turvy game in the Navy contest. Matt Rule actually told us that he believed that was Medikevich's worst game, actually, of his career, and Tyler was very upset. Had a better second half in that one. I thought Tyler threw a great block, and that's what I love. You have these guys on special teams, on the defensive side, also competing on special teams. When Medikevich threw that block on the Khalif Urban 84-yard punt return, that said a lot to Ken Dunnick, my analyst, and I, that you have basically a first-team all-conference player going on special teams and going to work, and that really is unselfish play. And then lastly, Phil Snow has a very thin secondary with you have Alex Wells still out, Bouye Aromare has been banged up. I know he got a little bit of time, and Nate L. Smith has been hurt. So you have these 2s and 3s that are coming in the secondary, too, and playing well. And you alluded to all those turnovers this year. I got to think this team's definitely going to win more than one game in conference like they did last year. I think Temple obviously picked the finish in the bottom in the AAC. I think that's going to change. Ken and I said on the broadcast during one of our halftime segments, we see them as maybe a 4th, 5th, or 6th place team. I don't think they're going to be on that 8th spot.
I think they're a lot better than what people are advertising them as. We're talking to Dave Leno, who's kind enough to give us a few minutes to call the Temple 59-0 victory over Delaware State on ESPN3. And it really starts with that defensive line because last year Temple didn't have an identity, and they were talking about how it was going to take a full year for Phil Snow to implement his offense. But every week, I remember last year going into the Notre Dame game, Matt Rule emphasized getting a pass rush and having good defensive line play. And Matt Ioannidis has been a big force in the middle of the field for them. And also you mentioned Sharif Finch, who had that big pick 6. It really started up front, though, with those big boys in the trenches on the defensive line.
It absolutely did. Hershey Walden has also earned the number 1 jersey this year, normally number 72, that number 1 being the toughest player of that week. He has been a smart punt. Praise Martin Oguike on the outside. I know he didn't start. Chudnoff started for him in that Navy game, but Praise got the start yesterday. You said it great there because Matt Rule told us that he wants his team to be more physical. And obviously Navy, posed that triple option offense, which was certainly hard to handle. And obviously Keenan Reynolds, the quarterback there, he's just a flat-out stud. He's going to be, in your conference next year. So that's going to kind of be great, I think, for the AAC as Navy shifts from independent over to conference play. But going back to Temple, it all starts up front. I agree, and you said it right. Now, Matt Rule said day, and it turned into 2 Stanley Cups. And that's the brand, the identity that Temple wants to bring, that Temple tough attitude. And I think that 59-0 win against the Delaware State team, as I alluded to, probably should have beat Towson, despite the few blunders of the bad on special teams in the Towson match and, of course, in the Temple match. I still like the victory, and I like that they shellacked Delaware State because it told me that they are for real. Forget the Navy game, which is a game that, quite frankly, they came back with 14 unanswered, and maybe a little bit more time and one less turnover they could have won, or one less stop on Keenan Rem. But I think this defensive unit, as you said, I think that identity is growing, and I think Matt Rule, Phil Snow, and company are very pleased.
Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. here with you on the way out with Dave Leno. And Dave, you're right, and they're starting to build that identity like we were just talking about. But now, and that Delaware State game could be a confidence-building game, but now the message has to be you have to string 2 wins together, something they couldn't do a year ago. And they're going up against a UConn team. They're not the best team in the world. They're 1-3. Temple last year, they blew a 21-0 lead at home in the Link on a late-night game up against UConn where Yawin Smallwood had a pick 6, but UConn's only win of the season came up against Stony Brook, where they barely squeaked by them, winning 19-16. The message now for Temple has to be, hey, let's go put 2 together and win our first conference game.
Absolutely, and I think they can. I think up there, they board early, because I think that's been the key. And I know sometimes people say, oh, that's a cliche. If the visiting team scores first, yeah, they have a chance. But I think with the Temple team, if they get out to maybe a 1 or 2 possession start and they're leading very early, I think because the defense has played so well in that Delaware State game, hopefully it will carry over for them and they'll prevail. And, sticking with the AAC here, Cincinnati has new quarterback in Gunnar Kiel. Was it Notre Dame? Actually, was it Indiana? Was it LSU, but left Indiana and LSU, and obviously left Notre Dame to be at Cincy. Gunnar had a great first game for Cincinnati where he threw over 480 yards, but he's in a new place, new face, new place. Who knows what he's going to be like this year? And also you have UCF, who's picked to finish also in the top of the AAC. They're bouncing between 2 different quarterbacks. But George O'Leary trying to find a new identity without Blake Bortles or a Storm Johnson. So there's quite a few teams in this conference that still, for me, raise some questions. Houston obviously picked to finish up high. I know you guys beat Memphis last year, but a team like SMU, I really don't know how they're going to prevail. So I think if Temple comes out, again, with that same swagger at Delaware State, and they bring that up, it's East Hartford and beat this UConn team, I really believe that you guys have a big, big chance of even getting in that 4th spot, maybe even 3rd place in the conference if it all continues.
One thing I really like about you, Dave, and I love your on-air work, is how you present yourself off the camera, because I always notice when you're in the press box as you're getting ready to get a cheesesteak or something before a Temple game that you're in the nice-looking suit, but you're wearing nice casual Nike sneakers. How do you decide what kind of shoes you wear before a game?
Some swagger, Dave.
That's pretty funny. Well, first, number one, I was good this week. I didn't have one cheesesteak in there. Usually I don't like to eat before, I don't like to eat a big meal before I do a telecast there. That's just something with it. But anyway, going back to the shoes thing, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I like to be comfortable, obviously, so I worked the U.S. Open as I told you, this year for U.S. Open Radio. I was a sideline reporter. I've done play-by-play in the past, and I got these very nice Rafael Nadal Nike sneakers, and really, I don't think a lot of people have them. I think they only saw them at the U.S. Open, but I'm sure you can get them now online or something like that. And I played in the U.S. Open Media Tournament. I won, actually, for the Navy game. I wore the shoes with my suit, so I'm wearing these nice Nike Plus sneakers, because I wanted to break them in for the U.S. Open Media Tournament. I won the media tournament, thank God. So I was like, God, man, I got to continue this thing with the suit. So I brought it up again. Listen, they're not on camera. They always throw a 2-shot anyway from the waist up on air. So you'll notice a lot of guys, in particular sideline reporters, or at least men, not so much women, will wear, either cleats or sneakers just to be comfortable. And, obviously I'm a guy that likes to dress. I like to look good in those Italian suits, but at the same time, you gotta be comfortable, especially when you're going in a hectic environment. When you're on TV, you want to be relaxed, because what people don't understand, I do radio, I do TV as well. They're both 2 different types of broadcasts. On radio, as you guys well know, the play-by-play guy is the guy in charge, and, really he's controlling everything when you throw it to break and all that good stuff. On TV, I'm basically going by what my producer tells me. Obviously, we call the action with myself and the analyst, but the producer's throwing up graphics. He's saying something in my headset. To my left, I have the statistician. To my right, I have my spotter. So, again, I want to be relaxed. I want to be comfortable. I'm like, you know what? Take the jacket off, lower the tie a little bit, unbutton the collar, and wear some sneakers to make it all go so smooth.
Well, I'm a Federer guy, so I guess I don't like those sneakers anymore.
Listen, I would have liked to see Federer win, this year again, but unfortunately for Roger, he probably only has a couple more cracks at it left.
Well, Dave, we appreciate the time today. We got to run, but thanks so much. We appreciate it, my friend.
All right, Zach and Chase, continued success to both you guys and the rest of the station.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much. So there, Dave Leno right there joining us on the hotline, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP.